Welcome, everybody, to the Soul of the Unexplained. I am one of your hosts or co hosts. I am Jim with two M's, one, two. Yeah, baby, that is moi. Thank you so much for joining us today. And again, unfortunately, my dear friend, my brother from another mother, Mr. Roger Stokes, is not able to be with us this evening. He's still recovering at home, and certainly extend my best wishes for a speedy recovery to my dear friend Roger. But joining me today, because today we're having a conversation about the upcoming Congressional UAP hearing that will be held on Wednesday, November 13th in Washington, D.C. It will be a Joint Oversight Committee hearing, and it looks to be pretty interesting, quite a bit different from what the hearing in 2023 exposed us to and what that hearing entailed. And we'll talk about what some of the differences between the hearing that occurred last year with David Grush and Ryan Graves and David Fravor as witnesses versus what's going to be taking place this year at this new UAP hearing. But joining me today, just as with last year, just kind of wanted to maintain the continuity. Those of you that will remember, I had the awesome May de Agua or May de Agua joined us for the primer and the recap last year. So May is joining us again tonight. And also, of course, my favorite Denver Broncos fan and my hitchhiker bandmate, Mr. John Nyberger, is joining us as well for this roundtable discussion as we offer a primer or a preview of sorts and what our kind of observations are for what we think we can expect for this upcoming hearing. So, May, hello and welcome. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing pretty good, guys. I'm just, not liking the time change and it getting dark early, and I don't like it, but I'm happy to be here. And look, I had to make sure I represent
Oh, there you go. Right on.
in honor of you two. So, but yeah, it's fall.
Right.
I'm here.
Awesome. And John, your Denver Broncos actually came close to winning, which is better than my Raiders. Actually, my Raiders didn't lose today because it's a bye week. So there we go. John, how are you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was doing good. I was doing well until you mentioned that again, and now I'm frustrated again. So close.
Those damn Kansas
Beating the
City
Chiefs
Chiefs,
in Kansas City. So close.
right? Exactly. So folks, let's just kind of dive in. There are obviously there's some noticeable differences as we head in to talking about this hearing that's coming up, which I'm certain and confident in saying this will be yet another historic uh, event in the this overall field of UAPs, UFOs, and how they pertain to not only our national security but also aviation safety and risk and all kinds of stuff. And of course, the favorite term that people like to throw around of UFO or UAP disclosure, right? So let's first of all talk about who the witnesses are for this upcoming hearing that's happening on Wednesday. And whereas last year we had three witnesses, and of course those three witnesses were David Grush, Commander David Fravor, and Ryan Graves. Now, Graves and Fravor were retired naval aviators. They flew F-18s. They're very seasoned uh, air airplane pilots, fighter jet pilots. And David Grush, of course, was an intelligence official, worked for the National Geospatial Agency, Intelligence Agency, or something along those lines, and was also at one point connected to the UAP task force at the Pentagon. So those guys had very solid resumes and extremely credible witnesses, those three. So this time around, instead of getting three witnesses, we're actually getting four individuals who will be testifying at this Joint Oversight Committee hearing held in Washington, D.C. on November 13th. And those witnesses are one name most of you should recognize, and that's kind of like the big, dare I say, celebrity of the bunch, and that would be none other than Lou Elizondo. And we'll talk a little bit about Lou in just a moment. But the other three people that will be joining Lou Elizondo are a gentleman by the name of Tim Gallaudet. Now, Tim was a rear admiral in the United States Navy, and he's worked with the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association or agency, basically NOAA. They're the ones that help to keep track of what's going on in our oceans and the atmosphere and whatnot. So he comes from a place of he'd be well informed to speak about the things he's going to be talking about. And next is a journalist, investigative, independent journalist by the name of Michael Schellenberger. And he recently came into prominence for an article that he published on his online website, where he kind of exposed the world to this specific program that is alleged to exist that's called Immaculate Constellation, or IMCON, IMMCON, IMCON. And then there is also the fourth person that will be testifying is a gentleman by the name of Mike Gold, and he at one point worked for Bigelow Aerospace. Of course, we all know the name Bob Bigelow and how he was involved in the study of UAPs and strange phenomena. Was at one point the owner of Skinwalker Ranch before Brandon Fugel took possession of the ranch. He's the one that sold the ranch to Brandon Fugel back in 2016. So Mike Gold worked for Bob Bigelow at one time, and he's also a member of NASA's UAP investigative committee. And if I'm not mistaken, I think NASA's committee looks at not just NASA's assets that report UAP encounters, but also some civilian instances as well. So those are the four individuals that are going to be talking, and I'll start with you, John. So let's obviously tackle the big fish of those names, which would clearly be Lou Elizondo. Now, Lou Elizondo has remained kind of in the forefront of this new trend of disclosure ever since 2017, and Lou played a bit of a role in the New York Times article getting published that is now considered the genesis of the new modern movement, if you will, moving us towards this so-called disclosure. And Lou was involved in the Pentagon, and he's got a counterintelligence background and all kinds of interesting stuff. And of course, most recently, Lou has finally published the book that he'd been telling us that he was going to publish for several years. And the book is called Imminent, and it contains his personal experiences and encounters that he had serving in the Pentagon that have kind of, taken him down this rabbit hole that all three of us, you and I in particular, John, of this whole crazy microcosm, if you will, or even macrocosm in some ways, I guess we would say, of this phenomena known as UAPs or UFOs and everything that goes along with it, up to and including Skinwalker Ranch, right? So, John, let's talk a little bit about Lou Elizondo. What's your take on, what do you think we can expect Lou's going to talk about, and maybe why you think he would be considered somebody worth listening to at a hearing like this?
Boy, you would throw that at me, phrased
Of course
that.
I would, naturally.
Well, I have gone on record as recent as a couple of weeks ago saying I would eat my shorts if Lou Elizondo testifies under oath in front of Congress. So
are we going to live stream this? Is this going to be live streamed?
We might have to. Do I get some barbecue sauce, or some sort of condiments to go with it? But
yes, folks, John Neinberger is opening up an OnlyFans account specifically so he can do this, and we'll put that information down in the description.
Yeah, with cilantro, right?
With cilantro,
with
yes.
cilantro
and guacamole.
And guacamole.
Right?
There you go. But I still very firmly land in the camp that I'm not quite sure what to make of Lou Elizondo. and I don't buy his story completely. I think there's the problem I have with him is I think there's parts of his story that are true, that are absolutely true, some that are maybe not so true, and there's this huge gray area. And I've kind of worried about his timeline. You know, sometimes he's made certain statements to one person, but then he'll make another statement to someone else that just doesn't quite jibe with what he said. And when that happens, it just kind of makes, it's just a little bit of a red flag. So I'm still kind of worried that we're not getting the full story there. So, with that said, if he testifies under oath, that's going to be very interesting
Right.
because then we can pay very, very close attention to what he's saying. What words is he using? Exactly how is he saying it? Because it counts when it's under oath, right? If it's not under oath, it's not as big of a deal. But when you're under oath in front of Congress, then it matters. So
Right.
yes, I'm extremely interested in hearing him testify. I am not as interested in eating my shorts. So I'm hoping he cancels at the last minute. Uh, yeah, it'll be interesting though. I think um, in the context of this hearing, I don't know what he's going to say. He who knows what he's going to talk about. It
Right.
might just be rehashing stuff we've already heard. I don't expect anything new to come out. Honestly, I don't expect anything new to come out from any of these guys because it's a public hearing, right? The stuff
Right.
we want here would have to be in a skiff somewhere,
Right.
you know.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to. I mean, I hate to say it, I am looking forward to hearing what Lou has to say under oath.
Yes. And that's the key right there. And I'm
Right,
glad
under oath.
I'm glad you mentioned that because we do have to take seriously what these guys say because they are the first thing that they do is they swear them in. They put them under oath that everything they say, they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Mhm.
And so we have to lend some credence to the things that they say. Now, is it possible that any of these gentlemen could purposely deceive and not be entirely forthcoming? I guess is the polite way to say it. Of course, that's always a possibility. But like you, there's a lot of things about Lou's background, not so much his background, but just the way that he's told some of the things that he's been involved in, the way he's related certain things um, don't seem to add up completely. And I'm going to stop short of calling him, dishonest or a liar or anything like that because I don't know the guy. I don't know him well enough. I've never met him, but just in my own research that I've done, and those that know me know that I read an awful lot. I'm very well read on this particular subject, and I tend to be fairly. I've got a pretty good track record of following what my gut and what my intuition tells me to when it comes to people that are big personalities like a Lou Elizondo. So, like you, there are some things that raise a couple of potential flags for me. But again, the fact that he'll be placed under oath, it'll be interesting to see, first of all, what kind of questions are asked of him, and in addition to what he says in his opening statement. It'll be interesting how he frames everything that he's going to be talking about. I guess is the one way that I can say it. But yeah, we also have to temper this whole hearing. The three of us are somewhat well informed on the subject because we pay attention to it, right? I mean, the podcast that Roger and I do, the fact that all three of us are we have a passion and an interest for what goes on at Skinwalker Ranch. So this hearing is going to be mainly the new stuff is going to be for people that aren't always paying attention to what's going on this particular topic. So a lot of the things that Lou and I'm sure some of these other guys are going to talk about are going to be completely new to the vast majority of people that are going to be tuning in and watching the hearing live or that are going to be reading about it or going to be watching whatever news program, hopefully the mainstream media will pick up on it and report accurately on it. But it's going to be new for them. So for us, yeah, there's probably not going to be an awful lot of things that are going to be earth shattering and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. Because as you said, John, all the really meaty stuff is likely not never going to come out in a public hearing. It's going to have to be discussed in a closed session in a secure location like a skiff within um, the Capitol or someplace like that. So I agree. I would 100% stand behind everything you just said. I feel the same way about Lou. I'm very interested that he in what he has to say, and I'm actually happy to see him testifying. That's not an insignificant thing that we should just dismiss out of hand.
I agree.
So
Putting your money where your mouth is, right? Or putting
exactly.
your mouth where your money is. In this case, he's like putting it on the line. If it's under oath, you got to give him credit for going out there. Let's wait and hear what he has to say. But
Right.
yeah, that's not a small thing to do.
Right. Exactly. Mayor, are you familiar at all? Do you keep up with what goes on with Lou, or I mean you know who he
Not a
is, I
whole
know.
Yeah, not a whole lot. I mean, especially particularly with him, but I mean, most of what I do learn, I either learn from you or in passing, because most of what I've been reading about this and about these witnesses is about the person that interests me the most is what Gallaudet will have to say.
Yeah,
So yeah, but yeah, from what I understand, like what you guys have said, pretty much Lou Elizondo is a big personality, and if he's going to go to that length of being under oath, there's got to be some getting some stories straight kind of there,
right.
which I'll appreciate.
Fair enough, and I would completely agree. So you mentioned Tim Gallaudet, May. Let's move on and talk about Tim because he's for me he's kind of like the next big big name that's going to be appearing. And Tim Gallaudet was again, he was a rear admiral for the United States Navy. He's worked with NOAA, and he's somebody who, uh, John, correct me if I'm wrong. I would describe Tim as somebody who can speak from a position of authority, if not firsthand experience with what they call USOs, unidentified submerged objects. Is that an accurate assessment, John?
I think it is. I don't know for certain. I don't know if he is a firsthand
Yeah,
witness of this stuff or if he just knows about it because of his position,
right. Good
positions he's
point.
held.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm going to
that's what I
be,
read.
yeah, I'm going to be really interested to hear if he comes out and says, I mean, it's one thing. I mean, he's former rear admiral, right? I mean, that's
right.
a big deal. If he comes out and says, "Hey, we've seen this stuff. Here's the types of things we've seen," without getting into the classified stuff too much, but if at least if he can confirm under oath to Congress that yeah, there's this stuff going on, we don't know what it is, that's a big deal. But I would love it if he would come out and say, I mean, I don't know if this is true, but if he comes out and says he actually saw the stuff himself,
Yeah,
like I have seen this material. Not that I've just heard about this material, because that's one thing, not with these guys in particular, but in this arena, a lot
Mhm.
of people say, I have heard, people have told me such and such,
right.
even if it's someone that's pretty high up. If most of what they say is someone I trust told me this,
Hmm.
that's kind of, that doesn't quite ring my bell. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, that's cool, but that's not the same as, hey, I was in this role, I saw this material myself and can verify that it exists. So I'm kind of curious to hear what he says because I don't know his whole story. I know just that tiny bit about his background. So it certainly seems like he's been in a position to be able to verify or know about some of these things. But I'm curious to see as to, to what level, to what
yeah,
degree.
Yeah.
yeah,
What I read, particularly with him, is that he has been uh, involved in reviewing the footage that is now verified footage of UAP and USOs captured by his colleagues. So he's been
Hmm.
in that position to be able to review and verify that footage,
Okay.
if not seeing it firsthand.
Yeah, that's
That'd
so.
be
Yeah,
cool.
that yeah, and thank you. I've always got to be, and that's why I'm glad that both of you are here because sometimes I get ahead of myself and I don't say things the way that I meant to say them. So yeah, I can't speak for certain that he has firsthand knowledge. That's a I guess a bit of a bad way of me phrasing that. So thanks for catching that, John. But yeah, he's clearly somebody that was in a position of authority that, like David Grush, at the very least, would have been privy to some of these reports and encounters that people in his particular branch of service, in this case, the United States Navy, um, likely would have seen and encountered, and I'm sure he would have been one of the people informed of when those incidents occur,
Mhm.
if not actually having experienced some himself. But by
Well,
all accounts, he's a very credible, on the level kind of guy that, like a David Grush, should be paid close attention to whatever he has to say.
it just occurred to me, you know, this is gonna be funny, and we know someone. Never mind. But you'll know I'm laughing when I say this. But this harkens back to uh, Jay Stratton and the UAPTF and his involvement in those programs. As I understand it, is because of his position in knowing what was up in the air. Like he was an expert in what was in the air and what foreign adversaries were doing, and that type of thing. In a way, uh, Tim might be the underwater expert, similar
Right.
to Jay. Like he understand.
Absolutely.
People might come to him and say, "Hey, we heard this, we observed this, our sensors picked this up. We don't know what this is. Can you tell us what this is?" So it would make perfect sense that someone with his background might be kind of a funnel for people saying, "Hey, what the hell
Right.
is this?" You know,
Yeah.
uh,
That no. That
not to
that
be funny, but
that
that might be the case.
yeah, that actually makes a bit of sense, because one of the things that we know, and this is one of the things I fully expect Lou to talk about, is those observables. One of which is that some of these seemingly actual physical craft are have transmedium capabilities, which means they can go from being flying around in the sky up in 80,000 feet level, which is basically space, and fly into the water, into the ocean, without making so much as a splash, and seemingly travel underwater at these speeds that should not be possible with our current understanding of technology and propulsion and physics, basically our current understanding of physics. So, yeah, I would not be surprised if Tim Gallaudet happens to bring a skill set much to the same extent that somebody like a Jay Stratton, who was tasked with understanding and being able to identify um, any kind of objects and craft that are in the air, and being able to say, okay, that's one of ours, that's one of China's, that's one of Russia's, that kind of thing. So certainly, that's I would say that's within the realm of possibility, if not likelihood, of some of the things that Tim might address or be asked to talk about and clarify during his time at the hearing. So yeah, I think that's a very valid point to bring up for sure. So after Tim Gallaudet, again, the next one we have is a gentleman, an investigative journalist by the name of Michael Schellenberger. And John and I have talked about this article that Schellenberger released. I think his website is called Public, or The Public, or something like that. Um, and he published an article several weeks back, kind of breaking the news about this secret program that was called Immaculate Constellation. And John and I kind of refer to it as IMCON, IMMCON. And so basically, what Schellenberger and the thing that makes this interesting to make note of is that Schellenberger is not at all a UFO guy. He really does not, that's not what his reporting is about. He typically reports on, um, I guess the best way to say it is like abuses of power, right, within the government. And so he's all about exposing corruption and abuse of power in the government. And so this story of Immaculate Constellation drops on his desk, and he's put in touch with this whistleblower who we still don't know who the name of the individual or individuals are that came to him with this information with alleged firsthand knowledge, these whistleblowers that came to Schellenberger, that there is this program that is much like David Grush talked about last year in the hearing and in his News Nation interview, where the United States government has these programs that exist off the books, if you will, these unacknowledged special access programs, where a lot of the claims are that the crash retrievals, UFO, UAP crash retrievals, where they have recovered craft and technology, exotic materials, I think is the way a lot of the time it's referred to as well as quote unquote biologics, right? The occupants of these craft that are uh, non human in origin and non human in nature. And that's all that we know is that they're ascribed the term non human intelligence. And they make it a point to not call it extraterrestrial or interdimensional, but simply just non human intelligence as, I guess, the umbrella catch all term, if you will. So, Immaculate Constellation, it's a really interesting story that kind of reads like a you know like something you would see out of a Hollywood script for a movie or in a sci-fi spy craft kind of novel type thing. Um, but the thing is, there's not a whole lot. This for starters, it was the first time that this phrase, this code word, if you will, of Immaculate Constellation, kind of came into the mainstream consciousness, if you will. And because of that, there's not really a whole lot of information that's available. And the information that is available is kind of circumstantial and anecdotal, which is to say, there's not a lot that can truly be confirmed one way or the other. But what makes this interesting, John, and I'll point this to you because you and I have kind of been following and watching this story develop over the last couple of weeks, is that two other people have chimed in on this Immaculate Constellation, and that would be Jeremy Corbell, filmmaker and podcaster, and George Knapp. And of course, Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp have this wonderful YouTube based podcast series called Weaponized. And George Knapp on this Weaponized podcast actually confirmed that he saw this document that Michael Schellenberger references in his article about this Immaculate Constellation being this kind of like the code word, if you will, of the United States uh, cover up of the UAP and UFO phenomenon, crash retrievals, and all that stuff. So George Knapp says that he has seen the document that Schellenberger has claimed to have had access to, and Jeremy Corbell also uh, adds his, I guess we would call it testimony, or asserts that he has knowledge of it being accurate and legitimate as well. And it kind of takes a bit of a left turn there, John, because in that particular episode of Weaponized, and also Schellenberger himself has stated this publicly when he was interviewed by Ross Coulthart of News Nation on Roscoe's Reality Check podcast, that he was warned that simply putting the name out there on the internet of Immaculate Constellation will basically put him in the crosshairs of intelligence officials that are tasked with monitoring any chatter that goes on that mentions those specific things. So I guess by definition, that would put me in the spotlight as well, right? Heaven
We're on
forbid.
the list. We're on a list.
That's
If
right.
we
I'm
weren't
new.
already, we are now.
We it was inevitable, right? Right.
Yes.
But so John, I still personally I don't know what to make of Immaculate Constellation. And I know that we briefly touched upon it the last podcast that you and I did together. And I still don't know. For me, the jury is still out on Immaculate Constellation because there's still so much that just there's not a lot of solid ground that we've been given to be able to independently verify, right? So it's just one of those, and I really don't mean this as a backhanded, slap at Jeremy Corbell, but one of the consistent criticisms of Jeremy Corbell is, he follows that philosophy of trust me, bro, and I do trust him up to a point. And specifically, I mean, I got to be honest, George Knapp, to me, George Knapp is about as solid as they come. And I do trust the things that George Knapp, when George Knapp says, pay attention to this, I'm going to pay attention to it because he's somebody that vets his sources and does everything that he can. Now, does that mean that he can't be fed disinformation? And no, obviously, you got a difference between misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation is inaccurately reporting something or inaccurately putting stuff out there that, it's not deliberately done. Whereas disinformation is put out there specifically to mislead, to deceive, and to it's deception. It's outright lies, if you want to. That's what disinformation is. So obviously, it's always possible that even somebody like a George Knapp can be fed information that's bogus. But George Knapp has been at this long enough that I think his track record speaks for itself. And I have nothing but respect and admiration for George Knapp. But in me saying so, does that mean that I buy everything at face value, full stop? No, it does not. I am still a skeptic at heart. I still want to see that the homework has been done. I want to see the processes that have been followed by people like Corbell and Knapp and Schellenberger that have allowed them to arrive at this conclusion that this is true. This is accurate. The information that we've been given, however earth shattering and hard to believe it may be, this is why we say what we do and why we say it's legitimate. Um, so I don't know, John. Immaculate Constellation or IMCON. I think that's really the whole reason why Schellenberger is there is to address that and to talk about the as yet unnamed whistleblower that has come forward. But both, Knapp and Corbell, they basically add their amen to what Schellenberger has written about, saying, we've known about this guy for a while. We've known about Immaculate Constellation for a while. This is just the tip of the iceberg. So, all my verbose way of saying, John, what do you make of all this?
Well, you're right. We did cover this, last time we talked. I don't think my opinion has changed. I might be too skeptical for my own good. Like I don't believe anything anyone tells me. So, but there's something about this that doesn't feel right to me. And I can't really put my finger on it. I don't know the way things really work, so I don't know. But it seems to me that if someone leaked something this highly classified, and as I recall, Schellenberger said that some of the members of Congress have the documents and know who the alleged whistleblower is, if you want to use that term. If that's the case, the FBI absolutely knows who this person is and would have arrested them already, in my opinion. I don't know. I am not law enforcement. I am not federal law enforcement. I don't know how, any of this works, but there's just something fishy about that. The other thing that I kind of worry or wonder if this is, like a honeypot of sorts. It's a counterintelligence thing. Someone purposefully put this where it could be found to see if it would be leaked. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
they put that on the top, on the surface. And so if someone sees that, they're like, oh my God, we have to let the world know. And then they take it and run with it. And now, it was designed for a purpose, and now this person is doing exactly what they expected. This
Right.
person releasing it, and was it a honeypot where they wanted to catch someone? If that's the case, again, they would have arrested this person already because they know they did it, right?
Right. Right.
The fact that they haven't done that yet makes me wonder, was it leaked on purpose? Is it disinformation? Is it purposeful disinformation to cover something else up? Is it a smokescreen that covers up
Right.
something else is real
Is it smoke and
by
is it
by
smoke and
muddying the
mirrors?
water?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have no idea. I truly don't know what to say about it, but something about it feels off to me, and I don't like it. Now, I will say another interesting thing, though, that I heard again, I have absolutely no idea if this is true. And I didn't pursue it enough today in preparation, so I'm really unprepared. But I thought I saw someone today suggest that, of course, someone who has a clearance can't walk into Congress and in a public hearing and divulge classified information.
Correct.
But that might not apply to a journalist who has reported on classified information that was given to him.
Right.
So if that's the case, what if this is a way of getting some of this information out into the public? Leak it to a journalist who then goes to Congress and testifies under oath, but the journalist himself doesn't have a clearance, doesn't have to worry about any of those sorts of repercussions, is protected by First Amendment, the First Amendment,
Mm-hmm.
and other, just legal case law, established case law.
Right.
What if that's a way to get some of this stuff out there? That would be kind of interesting. Maybe someone knew that that was a way to do this.
Right. Well,
I
and
don't know.
one of the things that Corbell in particular has been hammering home, or at least dropping not so subtle hints about this hearing, is that uh, we've heard so long for this term catastrophic disclosure, where we're trying the people behind the scenes, people like Grush, and all these other personalities that we know of, that are trying to go through the proper channels to release this stuff, going through DOPSR. Um, but when that doesn't appear to be working, and when the UAP DA legislation also gets shot down for a second year in a row, at least the measures that they want to put in that will really make meaningful progress, um, then the threat from people on the inside is they're going to begin what is known as catastrophic disclosure, where they start to circumvent all of those procedures and mechanisms that are in place to allow for this stuff to come forward legally, right?
Mm-hmm.
To prevent people from uh, compromising their NDAs and the oaths that they have undertaken when they're sworn in or read into these programs, right? So, is it possible that that's exactly what's happened with Schellenberger? Is that, like you said, John, he's a journalist, so therefore, to an extent, he has First Amendment protection, right? So if somebody comes to him with the information, leaking the information to him, even if that person is circumventing all these other agencies and all these other processes and mechanisms that are in place to allow somebody like this whistleblower to come forward through the proper channels, then would that not be kind of like a phase of this catastrophic disclosure where cat's out of the bag, the government can't do anything about it, and if they go and they do arrest this person, does this person, is this because it's now in the spotlight, as it were, um, make their job more difficult to contain it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was, we know that was part of the reason why Grush went public, was to maintain that profile so that if anything did happen to him, um, some of the threats that he received, both administratively and also, uh, we've been told he's had threats on his well-being,
Mm-hmm.
threats on his life, him and his wife. So, so to that end, catastrophic disclosure, if the quote unquote regular channels are not working, then it would make sense that something like MCON could be leaked in this kind of a manner that would not, it would basically give the government no choice but to allow it to come out. And that's kind of the whole philosophy behind it, which as we've talked before, John, is kind of fraught with its own double-edged sword, right? Because let's say that this stuff has truly been protected from us being the regular citizens of the United States, um, where this has been kept from us for a very good reason. And there obviously could be national security implications involved, but it could also go deeper than that. So I think what we're going to hear Schellenberger talk about and testify is this abuse of power, which was first brought into the public domain via the congressional hearing last year with David Grush's testimony saying there has been a decades long cover up deliberately done by the United States government and specific agencies within the United States government where these programs are operating outside the framework of the Constitution of the United States, where there is no system of checks and balances, where they are operating above and beyond congressional oversight, so those checks and balances can't be undertaken. And because of that, as you can imagine, when you allow programs like that to exist where they are not accountable to anybody, there's always the likelihood, if not the certainty, that eventually there's going to be abuse of the power and the secrecy that is afforded those kinds of programs when things like that happen. So I think that's what Schellenberger is going to testify. He's obviously going to talk. I mean, Immaculate Constellation is. I'd be really surprised if that's not what's discussed, but that's what makes sense to me that Schellenberger, because of how significant of a ripple that article made when he published it, um, I think that's kind of what his angle is going to be, and I think that's going to be the overarching theme of what this hearing is going to be about. Is not it's going to be more about the abuses of power, and because we are seeing this hearing is being conducted by a joint oversight committee, right? Not the Senate, Select Committee on Intelligence, right? This is specifically a joint oversight committee hearing. So therefore, it makes sense that what kind of the focus of this hearing is going to be, or at least one of the main focuses, is getting it on congressional record and on record with the American public that there are, in fact, abuses of power that have occurred and that may still be occurring with these programs that are allegedly these crash retrievals where exotic materials, as they call them, metamaterials, off-world, technology, um, non-human intelligence, right? We hear that term a lot. That these, I think that's what these testimonies, specifically where Schellenberger comes, is that he's going to talk about these things, that stuff that David Grush set the groundwork for. Here's a little more information to kind of add a little more detail and depth to that. So I think that's why Schellenberger is going to be there. And do you and John, do you kind of see where I'm going? Do you agree with my assessment on that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think that when you look at when I was reading through it was like an alphabet soup of agency names and different um uh, sub why am I can't think of words right now. Wording is hard. Just subsets of, you've got the three major players, the CIA, the DoD, and the DOE, and you've got all these just different branches. I was looking, the maritime branch of the CIA's Directorate of Operations, just the US Navy's National Underwater Reconnaissance Office. And you've got all these different agencies that I could easily see this particular program, the Immaculate Constellation, being an amalgamation of someone from here, someone from there, and being able to kind of keep it secret is easy because, oh, I can explain what my job is. It's over there with, the reconnaissance office. It's over there with oceanography. There's always that deniability that they're involved because they can truly verify that they have something else they do. First of all, I wish if it's the case, if it's real, I wish they would have come up with less of a tongue twister of a name. I keep going immaculate conception, immaculate
Right, right.
constipation,
Yes,
immaculate
those are the two. Yes,
consternation.
yes. The first two are the same ones I use. Yes.
It's like, come on,
Exceptional,
Stargate.
immaculate constipation. Yeah. Now I've said that one so many times that I
I'm
have
not
to
the
be
only one.
careful not to say it like in situations like this. Now other people are going to start saying it. So
Immaculate
Well,
constipation. There
I
we
mean,
go.
if
You
we
heard
if
you
I
heard
was
it here,
thinking it,
folks. John
yeah,
Nyberger.
if I was thinking it as well, then surely we're not the only ones, and you
yeah.
know,
And I think that's why John and I refer to it as IMCON.
I
Right.
like MCon because then my brain doesn't go anywhere else.
I just get tired of saying so many
Blah,
syllables.
blah, blah, blah.
I don't like to talk a lot, and that's a lot of syllables. But
Right.
I do think I was just thinking some more about what could be behind that and behind Schellenberger's testimony. And it's still something still doesn't make sense to me. I thought, we just talked about could this be a way that someone could leak some of this material, and get it out into the public? Sure, that seems plausible, but that still means someone leaked it
Mhm.
and they're still going to be in a lot of trouble.
Right.
No matter how you slice it, even if someone did it intentionally, you're still leaking highly classified material. And in this particular case, if what Schellenberger said was correct, that the members of Congress who have the documents know where they came from, then the FBI knows. You know that, or can find out. And the fact that we have not heard of any arrests, Schellenberger hasn't come out and said, "Hey, guess what? My sources has gone missing."
Right.
Nothing like that has happened, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I just always feel like we are trying to put a puzzle together where we don't even have all the puzzle pieces at all. And we're not even sure, like we get occasional pieces.
Yeah.
We don't even know if it's part of the same puzzle we're working on. And we're trying to jam them all together.
And we
Like,
don't even have the box top to tell us what the
right.
completed puzzle looks like,
Yeah.
right?
It's
So,
hard to even have an opinion about some of this. It's so convoluted and messed up that sometimes I get pretty dang frustrated. And this is one of those cases.
yeah,
We were talking privately earlier about a different topic, how the more you think about some of this stuff, the more confusing it gets,
right.
And sometimes the more information you get, even if it's from people know, you start trying to piece all of this stuff together and you're like, how in the hell do you put this together in a way that makes sense in my
Makes
head?
sense.
Yeah. And it can be really frustrating. And
Mhm.
this is one of those. So I'm looking forward to hearing his testimony. Maybe
Yeah.
it'll clear some of this up.
Me too. And that's really what I'm hoping from Schellenberger is a little more clarity. Maybe he can add some things that he wasn't able to articulate as effectively, as ridiculous as that may sound, in his article. Because the article that he published is quite concise, to the point there, and it's a brilliant article. I recommend it to everybody that has a chance to read it, even though it is behind a paywall.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, and John, you and I talked about in the last episode that we did, where we talked briefly about IMCON, was we kind of compared it to the Majestic 12, the MJ12 documents, right? Which is also something that to this day is still very controversial. It seems like half of the people that are into ufology, UFOlogy, right? You got one side absolutely are convinced that the MJ12 documents are legitimate, that they're real. And then you've got the other side of the debate is that they are completely bogus. They were made up. They're a hoax designed, classic disinformation, right? Smoke and mirrors, the real stuff's over here, but we're going to, trick you into looking over here while we're doing the real stuff over here. So MCON could certainly fall into that kind of a bracket. I can see it. I can see the similarities there because at this stage, anyway, we just don't know. We don't know even what that document says because we haven't read it. Whereas the MJ12 documents, you can read them. They're out there on a number of different sites, but all the official government sources, claim that MJ-12 documents are not authentic, they're not real. So with MCON, there's been no official uh, reply, although maybe was it Susan Goff? I think she said, didn't she chime in on it, or am I wrong
I
in
think
thinking that?
someone did. I think someone said there's been no group or project, of that name.
Yeah, right.
It just occurred to me a way that this could all make sense. This bullshit. No, I'm serious. Think
Yeah,
about what if, because Schellenberger doesn't have clearances. I don't know what connections he has. If someone comes to him claiming to be from some, you know, DoD program, or they're in the DIA or in some military branch of the military. Who knows where? I don't remember if he even hinted who this person was. Someone in the government.
mhm,
Depending on what it was that person did or alleged, that they did, how would he verify that?
right.
Does he even really have the resources to verify that person is who they say they are? And does he have the resources to follow up on the classified portions of these leaked documents? So it could be that it's really, really high quality BS. And that's why no one's been arrested because it's
Yeah,
not real, you know?
right.
That would explain everything we know so far. That it's extremely high quality, well thought out, well constructed BS by someone who is not actually leaking real documents.
Well, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate here for a moment. What if you're somebody, operating under the premise that there is something to see here, would you not seek out a journalist, an investigative journalist that is not in any way, shape, or form connected to the UFO community, right? Now you can say, well,
Yeah.
if I were bringing a story like this out into the open, I would want to, I'd go talk to somebody like a George Knapp or a Ross Coulthart or somebody that has some established credibility within the UFO or UAP community.
Right. I see.
So but also, would you not want to maybe add a layer of credibility and make people pay a little extra attention if you go to somebody who is known for not UFO reporting, but abuses of power and corruption within the government, which is exactly what
True.
Schellenberger does.
Yeah.
So again, just playing devil's advocate
I
there.
get it. I get
Yeah,
So
it.
that makes sense.
It
so
does
just
make
just spitballing here, which I know
oh,
Raider fans
I
are not
get it.
supposed to be capable of abstract creative
That
thought,
kind
but
of
Stop
logic.
thinking, Jim.
They
No,
got
I
that
get it.
logic.
That makes sense too.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
Something about it's not passing the smell test, and I don't know what it is.
right.
I might be wildly wrong. I just don't know. I truly don't.
Well, and to that end, John, I've found that most of the time when I follow my intuition, I'm usually right. When something doesn't seem right, when something doesn't add up, particularly in a field like ufology that is just fraught with outright hoaxes, outright fabrication, disinformation, misinformation, um, we should be skeptical. We should automatically take everything, particularly the more astounding and fantastic claims, with a grain of salt. We really should. It behooves us to do that. Um, because unfortunately, there's a lot of people that just want so badly to believe. And I get it. I'm one of those people that would love to have undeniable confirmation that there is another advanced intelligence that has interacted and is currently interacting with us. I mean, I have my personally held beliefs that we're not alone in the universe, but we don't know on a broad scale, are we alone on this planet? Do we have, other intelligences, other civilizations that have or that are currently visiting this planet? And the quite obviously the trending belief is that yes, we do have these intelligent civilizations, these advanced civilizations have in fact been coming here, or they are still here. Um, and because of that, because of everything, all the baggage that comes along with that, really extraordinary type of stuff, you have to have stuff that, as you said, passes the smell test, right? We have to see evidence. Now, Caleb Bench once said to me in a conversation, he said, why do you need the government of all organizations to tell you whether or not UFOs are real, or whether or not there is other intelligences out there? Because, like, if you've seen something with your own eyes, then if you've experienced it yourself, that should be all the confirmation that you need. And that's me kind of paraphrasing what Caleb was telling me, and I agree with that, because there would be reasons why an article like this with Immaculate Conception would come out, which you have perfectly illustrated. Smoke and mirrors. If you're somebody who wants to kill the momentum of this so-called disclosure, what better way to do it than to seed it with something that is so promising, but that ends up being complete and total bullshit, which is then going to, after it's attracted the mainstream media attention, who are already, as we've found out, very, borderline debunking on almost all the mainstream media when it comes to this topic. They still scoff at it. They still, derisively call it, oh, little green men, or little gray men. What better way to set the entire movement back than to seed it with some kind of bullshit propaganda nonsense like
Exactly.
Immaculate Conception. I did it, damn it. Immaculate Constellation, whatever. So yeah, so that's
twice.
I did it. I did it twice. Yes.
I didn't even notice. That's how used to it I am.
Oh, fucking A, I tell you. Sorry, folks.
We're crushing tonight.
That's right. Language warning. But yeah, that's what makes Schellenberger's testimony. It's going to be really interesting to me what he's going to have to say. So let's move on then to our fourth and final witness, which is a gentleman by the name of Mike Gold, and he again is worked with NASA on their committee to investigate UAPs and UFOs and strange aerial phenomena. And he also did some time working with Bigelow Aerospace. Now, again, make the clear distinction. As far as we know, Mike Gold was not involved with NIDS, which would be like working with Dr. Eric Davis, Colm Kelleher, out at Skinwalker Ranch. As far as we know, Gold was not involved with BASS, Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Studies. I think that's what BASS stands for. Too many acronyms, like you said, May.
Yeah,
but
too.
But Gold is clearly somebody who has some knowledge. What he's going to testify on is a bit of a mystery to me. I can only speculate what he's going to be there for, but because we've never really heard a whole lot about him or from him, he's kind of the wild card for me. I don't know. I don't know. What I've read of his background is certainly he seems to be somebody that could speak from a standpoint of experience of at least how different government agencies would approach and research the matter. But we've never heard anything coming from NASA that makes us think that NASA give a shit about what's really going on. I mean, they pay lip service to it, but so far anyway, I have not been the least bit impressed or convinced that NASA gives a fuck about what's going on. I mean, that's just me. I mean, it seems to me that if there is a cover up, NASA would be kind of the ones that are like sweeping it under the rug and pretending that it doesn't exist. So for me, I'm not inclined to place a lot of trust in NASA. But I don't know. This guy, he's a wild card. I don't know. Hopefully, I'm proven wrong and I can eat my words. But he's the one guy testifying that I have no idea what the hell he's going to be talking about. How about you guys?
May, do you have anything?
I don't know much. I'm on. Okay, made sure I had unmuted. I don't know much about him either. But I think that within the context of having these four very different witnesses with different credibilities and lines of work, and especially like you said with Michael Schellenberger not being a UAP UFO guy, um, I think that it's gonna be an amalgamation. You're gonna see these different pillars kind of supporting this idea that there is something going on. The government is hiding something. We know they're hiding something. What exactly it is, we don't know. But I think that given that last year, all we really got out of that was there is something going on. The government is aware of something. This year, we're naming names. And so we're naming agencies and stuff. So I think that these four different disciplines, these different people coming in, yeah, I think there's going to be some really interesting puzzle pieces put together. And yeah, we still may not know exactly what the picture's supposed to look like, but it's going to be more than we had last year from different people.
Right.
Yeah, I agree that this guy is going to be the wild card for me. I have no clue what to expect from him. The Bigelow stuff is interesting. He was at Maxar for a while, geospatial satellite imagery stuff. Um, and then he's at NASA, but from what I can tell, his background is mostly in legal policy, regulations, uh, government affairs type of stuff. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, maybe I don't know. I think you said it best, Jim. You might have something to say about how these programs might work, just generally speaking, but he doesn't come across as a technical person who's, involved in the nuts and bolts of things.
Right.
But, he is a part of the NASA, the UAP
Committee. Yeah.
investigative study team or something like that, IST.
Yeah.
That's kind of intriguing. Um, Yeah, but other than that, I truly don't know what he's going to bring to this. It might, maybe we're going to be shocked what he has to say. I don't know.
Yeah, that's why he's kind of like the unknown quantity because um, unless he's going to be there to talk about anomalies that NASA has in fact recorded on some of their assets that are in orbit, high orbit or low level orbit. But the interesting thing though is that he's not, as far as I know, he's not the spokesman. He's not the spokesperson for that NASA committee, as far as I know anyway. I could be wrong. But why would he, of all people, be coming forward and specifically when NASA has kind of had a really couldn't give a shit type of attitude about it? And, they pay lip service to it, which is what basically Arrow is. As we all know, Arrow does not have a solid reputation, and deservedly so, right? So, is it going to be another one of those where all of a sudden here we've got three witnesses that are telling, really compelling testimonies, and then they bring on Mike Gold to kind of be like, well, maybe not so fast, folks. I mean, that's what I'm
Yeah.
hoping. That's what I'm hoping doesn't happen because that'll really piss me off. Because again, like we said, what better way to throw a wet blanket on all this than to bring in a guy that's going to say, well, I can't speak to what Mr. Elizondo's talking about or what Mr. Schellenberger is saying. Yeah, right. Uh, but we've seen no evidence of anything. I mean, that's what I'm worried that a guy like Mike Gold is going to say. And then my response will be like, who the hell invited that kid to the party, right? So it's and that's what kind of, again, he's an unknown quantity. And maybe that's just my own ignorance, which I openly admit. I'm hardly an expert on these matters. Um, but I just don't know what he's going to bring to the conversation that's going to be substantive, and
Yeah.
that's what kind of has me wondering again, why is this guy here and not somebody else? And I guess the only way to answer that now is, stay tuned and we'll wait and see and find out on Wednesday, right?
Yep. I was just looking him up again. I mean, he was only at NASA for a year and a half. as a associate administrator of space policy and partnerships. And then he left in April of 2021. But then later in 2021 is when NASA set up the UAP study team
Right.
and added him to it, as well as a guy he worked with at Maxar, which is kind of interesting. Um, and then Scott Kelly, former NASA astronaut, he's on that team.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm with you. What's he going to say? I mean, this is the last thing NASA wants to be involved in.
Right.
Is he
Right.
going to come out and say, "Oh, by the way, yeah, it's totally true that NASA's been lying this whole time"?
That
There
would
were
be
aliens on the moon. We knew it since Apollo. Apollo
right.
11.
Yeah, I guess if I mean that would be cool, like have them come out and say, well, you know why Neil Armstrong was always kind of, a little reluctant to talk about his experiences up there on the Apollo 11 flight, and why Buzz Aldrin is so gung ho about wanting to explore Mars and all these other places, and and Edgar Mitchell's testimonies of being observed by UFOs while they were on the moon, and if he were to come forward and say, yeah, all that stuff is true, that would be like
Yeah,
that would be the bombshell right there.
it would
But
be, but it's more likely he's going to come out and say something pretty generic, like,
right,
"Yeah, you know,
exactly,
I don't know anything about that kind of thing, but we do occasionally see some things that we can't explain, and just from the standpoint of safety and perhaps national security, we should probably investigate them and fund these programs," which they've had people telling them that for years.
right,
How does that move the needle at all?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
if anything, that moves the needle back.
right. Exactly,
You
and
know,
that and
so
that get that
yeah,
that gets into what we've already covered on in that regard. So yeah, excellent point. And I just the I don't want to say the pessimist in me, but just the way that we've seen this whole field operate, it wouldn't surprise me if it ends up being something that comes out of left field where he's like, well, these testimonies that we've heard today from these other three witnesses are really compelling and really fascinating, but yeah, we can't really say anything like that with anything that I've seen. And, basically what Dr. Kirkpatrick has said seems to mesh pretty well with what my experience is. I mean, that would be
yeah,
that would be like, okay, who the hell put him on this list to testify, right? So I guess I have to have a modicum of faith that this guy is testifying for a reason that is going to bring something to light, or at least add further credence, if you will,
yeah,
to some of the things that have come forward already.
yeah.
And I guess that's the best that we can hope for, is that Mike Gold will speak to basically adding his additional corroboration of the things that he knows that some of the other people that have come before him have laid claim to, like a David Grush or Ryan Graves, David Fravor, the exotic behavior of these craft that Fravor and Graves and their colleagues have encountered. So I'm hoping that at the very least that's what he's there to do, is to say, yeah, we've captured some things on NASA's assets that seem to substantiate the claims made by others that are in the military and in the government that have recorded truly exotic craft displaying truly extraordinary flight characteristics and maneuvers. So I'm hoping that at the very least that's what it is, and then it's not a guy who's going to come in under the premise that he's going to be moving that needle forward, when in fact it's just a big nothing burger, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's
So
clearly been in a position to have made lots of relationships with people in this field.
right,
So maybe he'll surprise us.
right, and
Knock on wood. Fingers
yeah,
crossed.
yeah, knock on wood. So, um, well, a great way. That's a great point for us to segue into our closing bit here. So let's again just draw some parallels as to why this hearing is different in many ways to the previous hearing that was held in 2023. Um, and again, as I kind of remarked in our opening bit here this evening, is that whereas the first hearing that was held with Grush, Fravor, and Graves, I think we look back on it now, and that was kind of like laying the groundwork, right? Where Grush is saying, okay, there really is something here to see, like you were saying earlier, May. This really is going on. We already know that UAPs are real because the Pentagon and the government have substantiated and authenticated the veracity of the Tic Tac, Go Fast, and Gimbal videos in the sense that they are truly something that is, as of yet, unidentified aerial phenomena, right? UFOs. Um, so last year was more about, I think, getting it all on public record and getting it on the congressional record that there are these abuses of power going on, where there are these programs operating above the oversight and scope of Congress, where there's no system of checks and balances, and this technology and this knowledge of some manner of interaction with another civilization, another form of intelligence, this non human intelligence, is very real. And we have established some kind of evidence and proof of those extraordinary claims. But for whatever reason, our government does not see fit to share that information with its own citizens, let alone the rest of the civilized world, the planet Earth, right? So that's what that first hearing was for, and to get the testimony of the two credible witnesses in Graves and Fravor, who are tasked with keeping the skies safe and patrolling our skies, protecting them from any threats, foreign or domestic, in the American airspace. And we're hearing reports that we can't do that because these objects are flying into restricted airspace with impunity. And as Fravor said in his testimony last year, if these things had become hostile and not just simply a threat, but if they had turned hostile, he says very, very clearly there's no way they would have been able to defend against that kind of technology. And if that's not a sobering wake the hell up moment, I don't know what is. So that's what's so significant about the hearing that occurred last year was the the mentioning of the retrieval of advanced non-human technology and the retrieval and recovery of non-human, as they called, biologics or occupants, bodies, beings of some kind that were associated with some of these crashes and retrievals as well. So that was kind of what that hearing last year was all about. This year, I think because of the nature of the witnesses, it's going to be a combination of adding further testimony, further credibility of the existence of these programs, such as Immaculate Constellation. See, I got it right.
Good job.
And but then also the abuse of power, which I think is why Michael Schellenberger is testifying, because that's what he is. He's an investigative reporter that is not a UFO guy, that is not somebody who even had really so much of a passing interest in these topics, but yet this landed in his lap. So he had to give it due diligence. And so I think this is going to illustrate the fact that Congress needs to be made aware these programs exist. They are currently operating above your oversight as the Congress of the United States. They are operating above the framework of the Constitution, which by definition makes them illegal. And it's a problem, right? You want to have a system of checks and balances, particularly when the end game here is the acknowledgement that we are not alone, either in the universe or on this planet. And that has life altering, life changing, reality changing consequences and ramifications if that information comes out. And we can speculate till the cows come home as to whether or not that's a good thing and why. It's easy to understand that if and again, big if these things are all true, you can understand why the need for secrecy, because you don't want people to lose their minds. And quite obviously, there's a lot of people that would not be prepared for that kind of ontological shock to find out that, not only are we not alone, but we may not be at the top of the food chain, right? So it's easy to understand, but I think this hearing is important, and it's going to be historic because it's going to add that additional layer of, confirmation that what was talked about by Grush and Graves and Fravor in the last hearing is still very relevant, and we are now moving that needle forward. And I'm excited for it. I'm not getting my hopes up. I'm not going to, you know, build it up and hype it up and then find out that we're not, instead of the needle going like that, it's going to go, eh, it's not going to be anything earth shattering, but then maybe it could be. We just don't know. But I still think it's significant, and I think the difference between this hearing and the last hearing is that I think this one's going to focus more on the claims of the abuse of power, and because it's the Congressional Oversight Committee, and because they are interested in cases of making sure that these departments and services are not overstepping their bounds and that they're not operating outside the framework of the Constitution. I think that right there, the fact that it's the Joint Oversight Committee that is conducting this hearing, that's really kind of what the underlying theme, if you will, of this hearing will be. So, closing thoughts and remarks on that. We'll start with you, May.
Sorry. Yeah, I think like you said, I'm not expecting anything earth shattering. I think that when it does come to the, congressional oversight being necessary for a program like this, that if anything, if there's any just slight verification that Immaculate Constellation, that's going to be our new drinking
You
game.
said it,
Anytime someone
right?
says it wrong, anytime someone says it wrong, we drink. But that it exists. And if it did, again, you have all these people from all these different agencies that could possibly be part of it. And if anything else, we're acknowledging there's something here. There are materials being collected. Um, I don't need to have an agency that is coordinated for that purpose to disclose everything they're doing because there's still classification. But the fact that if one actually were to exist under congressional oversight so that that abuse of power isn't happening, so that people aren't getting their lives threatened, just that kind of thing, and then just to kind of make it more cohesive, to fall under one agency rather than someone from here, someone from there, because it's let's get that picture on that box, even if it's just a black picture, at least it's all under one thing. And I think that's rather than something earth shattering, revealing, or anything, just to say, hey, we need to get this under one bubble now.
I agree. I agree. John, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with everything May just said. I think focusing on the oversight committee. I mean, I think the last one was in oversight as well, if I remember right. But I think
It was a Senate, the House Select Committee on Intelligence was the last one.
I thought it was oversight. Regardless, um, I think focusing on oversight might be the way to go because those are the people that are going to get the most pissed off that they're
Right.
being cut out of their
Mm-hmm.
constitutionally mandated job, which is oversight, right? This is
Yep.
what they're supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
So for the people that want to get this information out, those are the people you want to get involved. Because if you can get them riled up enough, they might find ways to start chipping away
Mhm.
at these programs. And like May said, maybe ultimately find a way to get them a little more under oversight. I don't know how that would work. I truly don't. Again, I'm kind of hampered by the fact that I don't know. I don't know how it really works.
Right.
Um, I mean, congressional oversight on the one hand is like it's absolutely a necessity, but on
Mhm.
the other hand, have you looked at who we elect to Congress? I mean, they're kind of morons. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
are these the people you want in charge?
Doesn't exactly instill confidence, does it?
Right. Maybe these aren't the people we want
Right.
overseeing these programs. Um,
But yet at the
but
same time, it's one of the things that truly respects no party boundaries. You've got true,
yes,
nonpartisanship where you have both hardcore
absolutely.
conservative Republicans in lockstep with some of the most left-leaning progressive liberal Democrats, and they're all on the same page. And so that we
I
need,
love that about this.
yes,
I,
and we
that is
need to take advantage
exciting.
of that. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm so tired of partisan BS and to see like one topic
yeah,
that like the politics, at least in the hearings, just disappears.
right.
Like last year's hearing with Grush. I mean, we've talked about this before, but it still blows my mind.
Yeah,
The people that are out in the hallways, they're very partisan.
yeah,
In that hearing, all of a sudden that melted away, and they're like, "We mean business.
yeah,
Let's that we're on the same team." That never happens anymore. So
right.
yeah, that gives me a little bit of hope.
Yeah, and I do hope that's one trend that continues with this hearing, that we will see that we will
Right.
see, not so much look at it in terms of left and right, but these are our elected officials that are casting aside the ridiculous tribalistic partisanship that's out there in our current American discourse as far as politics and culture go, and truly toss that all aside for the interest of not only the American public but potentially the entire planet. And that's why I'm glad to see that there's proper gravitas being given to this hearing by both sides of the aisle, as it were, and that does give me a little bit of hope that you know that they'll make some progress on this. But either way, um, again, I'm not getting my hopes up, but you can be damn sure I'm going to be watching this hearing from start to finish. And folks, the good news on that is that uh, I don't know if any of the mainstream like ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox are going to cover this, break into their regular coverage, daytime TV coverage. I mean, me personally, I would much rather watch a congressional UAP hearing than watch The View, but that's just me. But you will be able to watch it, live stream it on C-SPAN. It might be C-SPAN two, I think, one of the two. I can't remember, but there's also the official House of Representatives website. There's a link there, I think, where you can go to watch it, and I'm sure that News Nation is going to live stream it, and some of the other cable news networks like maybe CNN might stream it as well. So there will be no shortage of options to be able to live stream it for free if you don't have cable or any of the other paid services. So just be looking for that. Um, and as far as the time, it's supposed to start at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be for May in the Central Time Zone. That would be 10:30 a.m. your time, and where John and I are, it's an hour earlier at 9:30. So I'm going to make sure that I'm wide awake by 8:30 or 9, and then I'm going to be glued to the television set or the laptop, just as I was for the hearing last year. And I'm hoping that I'm pleasantly surprised. But either way, we should still applaud and celebrate the fact that this hearing is even taking place, because that in and of itself is still progress of some sort. And we should be grateful and appreciative that we still have members of Congress that are still willing to pull the resources and the time together to organize something like this. And I will still extend my gratitude and appreciation to the four gentlemen that are going to be testifying. So, tip of the hat to Lou Elizondo and to Mike Schellenberger, Mike Gold, and to Tim Gallaudet. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm going to temper my enthusiasm because you know, I don't want to get ahead of myself and put the chicken before the egg, as they would say, or the ox before the ox cart. I don't know. I'm not good at the old sayings like that, but yeah. So
We're ready to be heard again
That's right. That's right.
Ready.
So May and John, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I think we need to look forward to a another podcast episode, perhaps next weekend, where we summarize everything that transpired. And um, I have a podcast I'm doing with Jeff Freeman on Thursday, so we can't do it the day after. And I don't know if we'll be able to cobble it together for Wednesday night, the night that the hearing happens. But certainly by at least 1 week from today, at least by next Sunday, I'm sure the three of us will reconvene and we can talk about everything that transpired and see if any of our predictions were accurate
All of the wonderful things that
and
came from the hearing.
And we're going to call it right now, folks. John is going to go as soon as he's finished here. He's going to open up an OnlyFans account and he will eat his shorts live on TV. We'll live stream the eating of John's shorts right here on the Soul of the Unexplained YouTube channel.
I'm sure you could find some edible underwear, John, that you could eat that
No,
instead.
that's a good point. I didn't say which ones I was going to eat.
Exactly.
That bring out the party pants.
Yeah, you'll be honoring that promise. It will
we have
be not quite as fibrous.
We have derailed yet again. But I digress, right, May? Take a drink.
Like fruit wraps.
Yep, there you go, right there. We got the Buffalo Trace tonight because I keep drinking beer during our podcasts, during our Soul the Synth Pop. I haven't had that much. And I keep forgetting that I keep drinking beer and then I have to mute my microphone because then I have to burp. So
where did you find Buffalo Trace? I've been looking for it everywhere.
Really?
Yeah,
Buffalo
I can't.
Trace is pretty.
I couldn't find it in Utah. Couldn't find it in Alabama. Couldn't find it.
Understand Utah.
Well, granted, but
that's what I'm hearing is somebody needs a Buffalo Trace bottle because I know it's not for yourself.
yeah, I would love a Buffalo Trace bottle. So, and yes, not for myself. So Michelle, if my wife Michelle, if you're watching this, it's not for me. I promise. But anyhow, folks, thank you so much for joining us today. And we have to give a special shout out to John. We have to give a shout out to Caleb Hanks. Caleb, we were hoping to get Caleb to join us for this podcast, and unfortunately, he's got a real something going on early tomorrow morning, and he wasn't able to join us. But hopefully, knock on wood, we can get Caleb to join us maybe for the post hearing summary and recap that we'll be doing next week.
The world is not ready for Caleb Hanks. They don't understand
yeah, folks.
People don't know.
Yeah, let me tell you, we get Caleb on here. There will be some adult language, so prepare yourselves.
Slap an adult label on on your thumbnail.
The question is, will we be able to get Caleb to wear his beaver costume?
Probably. Bucky Beaver. I'm sure he would.
Now you know what the Buffalo Trace was for, May.
There you go. Well.
Oh, good heavens. Good times. But also, we would like to extend our sincerest wishes to my co-host and brother from another mother, Mr. Roger Stokes, for a speedy recovery. We're thinking of you, Roger. We miss you, and we hope you get to feeling better soon and can get back on the saddle with us and talk about this stuff, because we sure do miss you. And we love having May and John on, but it's just not the same without having you there to keep us properly focused, Roger, because we all know that whenever I'm running the show, it's inevitably going to jump the rails, and we already have. So so come back soon, Raj. Come back to us. But seriously, folks, there you go. And if you like what you saw or heard in this particular episode, I encourage you to watch some of our previous Soul of the Unexplained episodes here on our YouTube channel. But if you like what you've seen, then please hit that subscribe button down there somewhere. And give us a thumbs up if you like the video here, and tell us what your thoughts are. If you have an interest in this particular subject, what are some of the things that you are hoping to get out of this upcoming UAP hearing? And maybe talk to us a little bit about what your thoughts are on Immaculate Constellation. Let us know your thoughts, or hit us up on Facebook. We're also on Facebook at the Soul of the Unexplained on Facebook. So, with that, folks, again, thank you, John. Thank you, May. Any closing remarks, real quickly, before we put this one to bed?
Nope, not
No,
for me. Just thanks for
good.
having us on again.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
All right, right on. Always a pleasure to have both of you, and I look forward to our recap that we're going to do of this hearing in a couple days for sure, certainly within a week's time. So, folks, love one another, take care of one another, be nice to bunnies, and eat as many tacos as you can. Make sure you put plenty of cilantro and onions on them. And you know what? If you dig guacamole, go for it. Live dangerously, right? Because life's just too short. And yeah, just be awesome to each other, truly. And with that, folks, we will see you next time right here on the Soul of the Unexplained. See ya.